Welcome to A Woman's Clarity, a podcast that empowers financial professionals to better connect with and serve their female clients. Listen in as host Kirsten Schlumbohm, Vice President of Annuity Sales at C2P, and her guests help you speak the language of women clients and meet their unique financial needs and goals.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on our topic on Women's Wealth Matters, Mastering Social Security Planning and Marketing Strategies. If you were at our MMC in June, you got to hear Ash talk about Social Security, so we're excited to have him. And I know from experience that Julie is a master marketer when it comes to women in Social Security. I'm excited. So I would like to first introduce Ash Ahluwalia. I don't know if I said it correctly. I say it translates into awesome. So Ash, awesome. He is a thought leader in Social Security. He's a public speaker on this topic, and he also teaches courses as part of his financial wellness program for his center of influence at OneTeam Financial. So welcome, Ash. And Julie Manning, one of my favorites. She is beyond well-versed in serving women, and it's her skill, it's her passion, and what she does day in and day out. She is a Social Security planning expert as part of her practice. So welcome, Julie, today to our panel.
Thank you, Kirsten. Glad to be here.
So Ash, share with us, how did you choose to focus on Social Security, and why do you feel like it's very important today's topic?
Well, Kirsten, here at OneTeam Financial, we focus on clients who are either approaching retirement or in retirement. And I don't know how you do retirement planning without doing a deeper dive on Social Security, because quite frankly, most people don't have pensions anymore, right? They have IRAs and 401ks, but you can outlive those. But everybody has a pension because they have Social Security. And it's one of the richest pensions ever created. And so when we do retirement income planning, we always start with whatever guaranteed income streams our clients have, which limits them to pensions, Social Security pensions, and annuities. But it's acutely important for women in doing retirement planning because, and I've written articles on this, I really think Social Security is a woman's issue because women typically outlive men. And so having a guaranteed lifetime income stream to help provide resources later in retirement is critical. And many times, women worked at home, right? So they don't necessarily have higher benefits that a lot of men do. And so planning for them is even more important. So Social Security planning, fundamental to retirement planning for everybody. And so that's why we focus on it here at OneTeam.
I love that you did hit on two things that are very important to understand is that one, women live longer. And in the workforce, we still are paid a little bit less. So it's important to understand the misconceptions and the truths about Social Security. So Julie, why did you get into Social Security planning and what led you to making it a passion of yours with working with women?
Yeah, great question. Like Ash, working in the retirement realm, what I found was there was very little strategy around Social Security. Either they come in and say, well, I'm just going to take it because all my friends are taking it, or I'm going to wait till 70 because, somebody at a cocktail party told me that was a great idea. And so making the right decision was problematic without a strategy around it. In other words, considering their other sources of income, longevity, is there a big difference in age between one spouse and another? And because it's so complicated, which I think is by design, it becomes really important to make that right decision because you only get a do-over once with Social Security. So you can't change it 10 years into it. And especially for women, if they're single women, they have their own challenges. With Social Security, they don't have additional assets that they could potentially file from, like a spouse. If they become divorced or widowed, again, it's so much more important that they understand how to manage those benefits and maximize them, and decide, help get some decisions on what they're actually eligible for laid out for them.
That's a really, really great point. Now, Ash, what are we missing? What are we missing when we're getting in front of our female clients if they don't know about their benefits?
Yes, and that's a great question because although it's certainly relevant when we're talking about women and Social Security, but it's really true for many couples. they don't even know what their eligible benefits are. All right. The first thing is it's so far off their radar. They might think, well, it's not that much money. I haven't seen my statement in years. Like they haven't even focused on it. So I encourage them to first, open an account at Social Security, look at what your benefit amounts are. I think they're pretty, surprised by that. So they're missing out on what their benefit is and how important it is as far as integrating it into an overall retirement income plan. For many people, Social Security is their largest retirement asset. They don't realize just how much money they're going to get. For couples, a typical middle-income couple over a 20-year retirement get about $1.4 million from Social Security. Many of my clients are going to get over $2 million. But even for single people, single women, and I say single, that could be divorced or widowed or never married, they could easily get $700,000 to $1 million from Social Security. These are eye-popping numbers. They've never even thought about Social Security in those terms. And they don't have a clue about the what ifs. Right? What if they're married and their spouse predeceases them? What if they got divorced or are divorced? What if their former spouse was deceased? Are they eligible for benefits? So they don't know all the nuances about Social Security. They don't know how it's taxed. They don't certainly know when the best time to file. And there's no cookie cutter answer for that, by the way. You got to customize that for every situation. And they might even be just thinking about rudimentary things like, is it even going to be there when they retire? So you have to get them comfortable with the fact that, look, Social Security is not going away. All right. The trust fund may run out of money in 10 years, but most of the money funding Social Security comes from tax receipts. I think they're going to make changes to keep it viable. So there's a whole host of questions. But I would say that the big one is that it's so far off their radar. They really haven't done it and don't know how to do a deeper dive on it.
It sounds like to me we have a awesome opportunity in front of us to help educate women with Social Security based on what you're saying. If they don't know that they can go online and open an account and know what their numbers are. So Julie, I'm going to pivot over to you. What is the biggest obstacle women have on understanding Social Security?
That's a good question. I would think that the bulk of women, especially generationally, have defaulted some of these decisions to the men in their lives. And I know my mother did and my grandmother did. We do see that that's changing a lot now, but the boomers for the most part are women that have said, I'll take care of the checkbook and I'll take care of the house expenses and their husbands are going to do everything else. And so when the husband passes and they have no knowledge of most all of the things important when it comes to retirement planning, it's a real impediment for them to have to dive in head first. So I say all that to say this. It is wonderful if women can get some education, even if they have a partner or spouse that's helping, to understand what their options are going to be when they need them. And, I think making the decision of when to file, especially if they haven't already filed when they lose a spouse or they get divorced, falls squarely on them. And so education becomes really important, and just letting them know that they have choices, explaining what those choices are there penalties for these choices? I think is their biggest obstacle is the educational piece, because they just haven't paid enough attention to it for the most part.
Right. They're too busy being the CFO of the family. They're taking care of the bills. They're taking care of the house. They're raising the children. And they don't possibly might not be a part of the financial planning process or asking for sharing that, because I think it's really important to help them understand the power that they have with their Social Security and the knowledge that they can gain by the education that you and Ash do provide. So Ash, how do we help advisors make Social Security a priority as part of their process and approach?
All right. Well, the way we look at it at OneTeam is it is fundamental to doing retirement income planning. It's literally the first thing we do. Like, until we find out what all the guaranteed income streams are going to look like, what that optimal Social Security filing strategy is, how do you proceed? I don't get it. I don't know why an advisor isn't doing it. Now, if they're not doing it because, I don't know, they're not interested, they don't have the skill set to do it, they should partner with people that do. Because I have plenty of financial advisors reach out to me and say, look, I can do everything else. I can manage the money, do the insurance. It's that Social Security piece. I don't know how to do it. I don't want to know how to do it. but I want to make sure my clients get the right advice. So connect with somebody who does, or get skilled in it, get an NSSA, study it, become a specialist in it. Because if you want to become referable as a financial advisor, all right, knowing Social Security and Medicare, fundamental to retirees. All right. Why wouldn't you want to do this? That doesn't mean you have to become an expert overnight. You can partner with people and get that done. But I think if you want to really help your clients, advise them properly as far as a comprehensive retirement plan, Social Security is an important piece. And I think if you want to get referrals from clients, they may not refer you for investments or life insurance, but they're happy to refer you to people for Social Security planning because their friends probably haven't done a deep dive on it either. So I say make it part of your overall retirement planning process.
So it's a way to open doors then, Ash, to new clients if you either become a subject matter expert or partner with someone to help with that holistic planning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous. Now, Julie, what are specific ways that women can leverage Social Security in a holistic plan or in even one of our bucket planning processes?
Yeah, sure. So, guaranteed income is king when you're retired. And so positioning that Social Security, whether they have a pension or not, becomes really important. And when we're looking to fill that soon bucket, we'll always have this underlying base income, which is really nice. Most people appreciate the fact that they can leverage that Social Security for income, guaranteed income. But I think probably the most important thing is to make sure that these ladies know that there's 3 different ways that they can file Social Security. 1 is on their own work record. 2 is on a ex-spouse. Potentially, they could collect up to 50% of an ex-spouse. And the 3rd is they could collect up to 100% of a deceased spouse. So, that comes really important in this holistic type plan because do I file on my own? Do I file on an ex-spouse? Do I file on, a deceased spouse potentially? And, I hate when people leave a lot of money on the table because they don't know the rules. And I'll just give you a quick example of somebody who didn't know the rules. It was a lady who had been married for many years to a fellow. She stayed home and took care of the children. They got divorced in her 60s, and she was working, at a doctor's office making pennies, and her Social Security was like $700, so not much. So I started to ask her some questions, and she's like, well, I've been divorced for, many years now. And I said, well, I'm thinking, well, she could get probably a divorce benefit at a minimum. She'd be able to do that. And then I asked her what her husband did for work. And she said he was a surgeon. And I was like, oh, well, it's probably going to be a substantial ex-spouse benefit. And then she said that he died. And so that meant she's going to get 100% of his check. So those rules that most women would never know unless there were some other probing questions into their situation become exponentially important when it comes to building out a holistic plan for them.
Julie, since you mentioned the rules, would either you or Ash just want to briefly go over what those rules are, the 3 different ways a woman can get Social Security, just in case somebody doesn't know in the audience?
I mean, certainly they want to look up their own benefit amount. They have an earnings history. If they have at least 10 years of earnings, right, they would qualify for a Social Security benefit based on their own earnings history. It's based on your highest 35 years, but you need at least 10. If you're married, you may be eligible to collect an amount. Well, you are eligible to collect the greater of your own or half of your spouse's benefit amount. And that applies for ex-spouses as well, as Julie was just talking about, right? So, and it's a little more complicated than what I'm saying, but there's that. And then survivor benefits. At the death of the first spouse, you get the higher of the 2 checks, right? Higher of your own or your spouse or deceased spouse. And that applies for deceased ex-spouses. So, but there's all nuances to this, right? I mean, the exceptions to the rule is where it gets crazy. So if you're divorced and you didn't remarry, you could collect 100% of your former spouse's benefit. But if you remarried before age 60, when you turn 60, you can't collect off your former spouse. But if you wait till you're 60 to get remarried, you could still collect. So there's literally a minefield of exceptions out there. So the fundamental basic rules, you want to find out, yes, what your own benefit is. Are you eligible for a spousal or an ex-spousal, or a spouse or survivor benefit, or an ex-spousal survivor benefit? But what is your situation? How long do you plan to work? What's your income? Right? There's other factors that play into it. Not to like completely muddy the waters, but there aren't any like, well, what are the 2 or 3 ways to get money? There are plenty of exceptions that you have to be aware of as well.
But the marriage there's a time frame. I couldn't have had a starter marriage and it lasted 18
You had
months.
to be married at least 10 years or longer,
Okay.
right? You and your former spouse have to be over 62. You have to be divorced for 2 years or longer, unless your former spouse is collecting, then you don't have to, wait the 2 years. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some basic rules just to qualify, but there's exceptions to those rules too.
Well, it's the government. I expect there's always going to be
Yeah.
an exception to the rules, and it's not just black and white. There's always going to be something. So, Ash, what are some ways that women can maximize their Social Security benefit?
All right. So before we even get to maximizing, they should look up what the heck their benefit is, right? Like go online, create an account at Social Security, SSA.gov. Create an account. And you want to do that for 2 reasons. One, you want to have an account so you can see real time what your benefits are, but you also want to protect your account from fraud. I mean, from what I understand is one of the ways people can't hack into your Social Security account is if you've already created an account. So you want to do that. Look to see if their earnings history is even right. I've had cases where people have gone into Social Security, looked at their earnings history, and they've missed like 5 years of earnings. So their benefits are understated because Social Security didn't get the right earnings history down. So there's that. You want to understand, how do you go about maximizing it? First of all, you understand it's your highest 35 years of indexed earnings. If you only have 20 years of earnings, they're going to put in those 20 years of earnings and 15 zeros when they calculate your benefit. So every time you can replace a zero with a year of earnings, you're going to increase your benefit amount. And that's true even if you're collecting a Social Security check. If you're still working and earning while you're collecting, you could increase your benefit because it's based on your highest 35 years of indexed earnings. So you want to make sure you understand how that works. And then again, there's all the other related benefits you may be eligible for. If you're eligible for an ex-spousal or a spousal or a survivor or an ex-spousal survivor benefit, those are all things that can increase your eligible benefit amounts. So there's a benefit based on your own earnings history, and then there's benefits potentially based on the relationships that you're in or have been in as far as spousal, ex-spousal, survivor.
We have a great question from the studio audience here. So, Julie or Ash, I'm going to throw this one out to you. What resources or people do you typically turn to when you have Social Security related questions? Now, I'm guessing, Ash, you're the subject matter expert, or Julie, you're also a subject matter expert. What if it's a question you don't know the answer to? Where do you go?
So I would tell you that if you go on the internet, you'll get lost in tons of minutia. SocialSecurity.gov's got some information. The one thing I will tell you, though, is you cannot call Social Security and ask them to walk through a strategy with you, like to help you figure out, is this one better than this one, and have those kind of conversations if that's what somebody's looking for.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I do. And that's a great answer, Julie, for sure. First of all, I have a partner in Pittsburgh. You know who's out there? A bunch of retired Social Security people. All right. And they're smart. And they were on the other side for 35 years, like my partner in Pittsburgh. He worked there for 35 years. He knows a lot of the nuanced, crazy rules. So I confer on every case I do. I work with my partner who worked at Social Security for 35 years. So I'm lucky there. But, if you don't have one, go find one. Okay. Because he actually found me. Just saying, they're out there. The certification I got, the NSSA, there are some wicked smart people over there. When I have technical questions, I'll email them and I'll get their responses. I think the software company that I use, they wrote software based on the Social Security rules. They have wicked smart people in-house. So I also confer with them. And to be perfectly frank, I ask 2 or 3 people the same question to see if I get the same answer. Because a lot of times I don't, which requires further research. But yeah, there are some great technicians out there who they're not great financial planners. I would never have them do a Social Security plan for a client because you have to know everything else about the client to do a Social Security recommendation. As far as the rules and the technical rules around Social Security, I go primarily to those three sources.
I did get a question from the audience. Ash, what software are you using?
I use Social Security Solutions.
Okay,
Social Security Solutions. I mean, there are other ones out there. I looked at a bunch, but that's the one I've been the most comfortable with. I like the way the software does side-by-side cash flow comparisons. The story that I go on is I don't try to find my clients the most money. I try to find them the best filing strategy, because the strategy, I don't know where this will come in the conversation, but the strategy that pays the most money is never the best. I say it quite bluntly. I've never seen that being the case, but I always want to show clients what that is and compare other strategies to that. And I'm trying to optimize upfront cash flow and give up a certain amount of money down the road, but not a lot, but give up some just to get more money in my clients' pockets early. Because Social Security, although it's a guaranteed lifetime pension, it's a guaranteed lifetime potential pension. No one knows how many checks they're going to get. So you want to look at the net present value of these projected cash flows. I mean, there are other things you have to look at when you're finding that optimal filing strategy. But Social Security Solutions software, I found for me, it fits the way I think about Social Security best.
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that software. Question for you, Julie, since we are talking about claims, how can advisors start the discussion on when to claim Social Security? Like when should you start that conversation, or how do you do it?
Well, it comes with building out a plan. As you know, I get a new client in the office. We start with income, and so we work around, what their other sources are, and then showing them or giving them the options to understand. If you're going to claim early, what does it look like? What about your health? If you're in good health or in poor health, that will help drive that decision as to when you might want to start to claim your benefit. Whether you can file against a spouse and receive a spousal benefit or an ex-spouse. And, and then if they were divorced, what's their benefit going to be, and when can they take those benefits? I always try to get them to plan a little bit earlier than later. Like if I take on a client that's, 55, start doing Social Security planning at 55. Like, let's try to figure out what's going to fit into your full plan, knowing that we might have to pivot at some time. But I think you have to kind of go over all the categories of how they could potentially file. And then one thing I always tell my clients is we're going to say it's 65 today, but tomorrow it might be 62 if they lay you off. So keeping an open mind and an open agenda around how to file, when to file, really, the rest of the world is going to dictate when they end up having to do that based on their circumstances otherwise.
Well, I know that you and Ash have a little bit of a differing opinion, so I'm going to throw this question out there. Is there an ideal time to turn on Social Security? Ash, I'll let you start with that. I think
All right.
threw that one out there for you too.
There's an ideal time for each individual or couple, but there's not an ideal time across the board for everybody, in my opinion. I think you have to have a customized solution because everybody's situation is different, right? Health status, how long they plan to work, what other assets do they have, what's their net worth, right? If I have a client worth $50 million, a very different conversation than somebody who has, not a lot of savings, right? There is no cookie cutter solution, but for me, what is consistent is my approach to optimizing it. All right. As I said, I always solve for the strategy that pays the most money, tell them I'm not going to recommend this, right? Because too many things have to go right for you to get the most money. I'm trying to optimize upfront dollars. So I have a certain approach. Having said that, what if we're doing Roth conversions, right? Maybe taking Social Security early isn't the best strategy, even though I solve to that because we have a more pressing strategy for retirement, which is Roth conversions and stuff. So we may want to find an alternative filing strategy to integrate that into an overall plan. If my client's worth $50 million, his biggest issue is not income, it's estate taxes. Why not take Social Security as soon as you can? Pay the tax on it, buy life insurance, leverage the potential income stream of Social Security to create 100% income and estate tax-free asset using life insurance. Pay their estate taxes. So in my opinion, the reason I have a 9-page questionnaire is I want to find out everything about that client just to make that Social Security decision the best one.
But it's also getting to know your client, which is the first rule of what we do when we sit toe to toe with our clients to create that client experience. Julie, do you have anything to add to when is the best time to turn on Social Security or your philosophy?
So I would tell you that what I've learned over the last several years is when we discuss the pros and cons of early or later, early as in 62, later as in age 70, I've had a ton of people say, let's wait till 70. And they're adamant that that's what they want to do, but they never do. I've only had one client that came in, and quite frankly, he had a little edge on the rest of them because he was like 68. He could wait 2 years. But for most people, something happens. Life gets in the way. They get laid off. They get downsized. They lose a spouse, whatever. So those decisions really are made in real time, to be honest with you, in my opinion. They are based on what's going on in the world, in your life, at your job, and they can be turned on at a moment's notice. So I tend to show all the options that they could choose. I will give them my opinion, and then we pivot a lot of times.
Life is what happens when we're busy planning, isn't it? Like, we never know. God's going to say this is what's going to happen when it happens. We don't have the crystal ball. So that makes sense. Now, Julie, I'm going to pivot a little bit. Now, you work with a lot of women. You market towards women. How have you tapped into that with your marketing?
So my team, I've kind of charged them with finding me some public speaking engagements with women group. I've got a client who is an anesthesiologist, and she said, I know a whole group of anesthesiologist women that get together monthly. They need speakers. So I'm really trying to find those women that, kind of fall in the category of what we've been talking about, that maybe haven't spent time thinking about it, looking at it, et cetera. Another thing that we're working on is, I've got a CRM full of women in there, and we're going to do a monthly video, a short video on Social Security just for the women. And then, of course, C2P is working on some women's stuff, which we're super excited about, to do some marketing to women specifically.
Yes, because we have people like you and Ash giving us great information. So thank you for that. Now, Ash, you are a public speaker. You're out there talking in the industry to this topic. You debunk a lot of Social Security myths. Are there a few that stick out that you wouldn't mind sharing that are tripping us up when it comes to retirement planning?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I do a lot of public speaking. My market is professionals, CPAs, attorneys. That's where I get my referrals, because my clients can refer me one or two people, but CPAs can refer me many, many, many more. So I look for professional referrals. But having said that, the topic that seems to have resonated the most of late are these Social Security myths, and there are hundreds. There's so much misunderstanding out there about Social Security. And I think fundamentally, the first one is that Social Security doesn't pay that much. People think, well, what's the big deal? I'm going to get what, a couple of $1,000s? They don't really understand that for couples, right? I have couples collecting over $100,000 a year in Social Security. Like, that's not even hard to do. Like, people can do this. But the point is, seeing it as a serious retirement asset that deserves a deeper dive, the first thing is to let them know that, hey, this is how much money you're going to get. 1 million, 2 million, like, it's a big number. So I think that's a myth, that they think that it's not going to pay that much. On the other extreme is they think they're going to get nothing. They got to race into Social Security as soon as they can before Social Security runs out of money, right? And as soon as they're eligible, they want their money. And Social Security is going to. So I tell them, look, 80% of the Social Security benefits do not come from the trust fund. They come from tax receipts. The number you're hearing in the press is how long is it going to take for the trust fund to run out of money? So I reassure them, don't race into Social Security, permanently lock yourself into a lower benefit just because you're afraid they're going to run out of money. There might be other reasons to take Social Security early, but that's not a good one, in my opinion. I've harped on this before, but the filing strategy that pays the most is never the best. And I think that always blows people away because they're trying to optimize their benefit in the sense of get the most. And I'd say, no, you have to be much more strategic about Social Security. You have to integrate it into your overall plan, but you have to optimize those cash flows because you have to risk affect the cash flows. You're more likely to live the next 5 or 10 years than the last 5 or 10 years of your life. Right? Who knows down the road? Make sure that people think their benefits limited to their own benefit. And the case may be that they're entitled to spousal, survivor benefits, all of those other potential benefits that could play into their own benefit. And there's also a sense that because of some corporate pensions, people say, oh, geez, my benefit's based on, the highest of the last 5 years or the last 5 of the last 10 years. So they have all these crazy scenarios. But they need to understand how the Social Security benefits work. It's based on your highest 35 years of index, and you need a minimum of 10 years. And maybe you're 1 or 2 credits short, and if you get them, you'll get a $500,000 pension. So just understanding that, Social Security it's complicated, all right? And there's a lot of confusion out there. You go to the internet, you're going to get a lot of misinformation on Social Security. So the myths abound, unfortunately. Gina knows that I'd have 25 myths to debunk. I have 50, and now I'm going to have one that's 100. And there literally are hundreds.
Would you recommend searching on the internet, or are you more of the mindset of find yourself a Social Security expert? Because the Dr. Interweb Financial, Google sometimes can give you a rabbit hole to go down. So how did you become so educated, Ash? And you too, Julie. What have you done to set yourself apart?
Well, I in my case, I started out with the NSSA. I thought, you know what? Let me take a course. I had to get on the internet and find out who's teaching Social Security. And there were only a couple of sources. I got a couple of certifications in it. But that was really foundational. That just got me basically the basic rules. I worked on literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. I've probably done over 2,000 now. Through those cases, I ran into nuanced scenarios, and I relied on those specialists at the NSSA, at the software companies, at my colleague who's a Social Security person, his wife who still works at Social Security who does advanced planning. So I have like my own little network of experts. But it was through those case scenarios that I developed more and more skills. But there are still scenarios that come up that I'm like, what? I've not seen this one before, And so doing the research on individual cases as they come up has also been a learning process for me.
I just got the question, how long does that course take, the NSSA?
Well, I haven't taken it in 10 years, so I'm on.
It's a 2-day course. It's a two-day course.
It's okay. So you would know. There you go.
Yeah. It's
I got a question I wanted to ask.
I was their advisor of the year in 2016, and I just told every financial advisor that I knew, go do this course. I don't care if you specialize in Social Security or not. You need to have fundamental knowledge of Social Security planning to be an effective retirement specialist.
Julie, what have you done to say? How did you get your background?
Well, I actually did the same thing that Ash did. I started off with NSSA, and the resources there are really a multitude of. They've got podcasts, they've got an open forum, they've got blogs, they've got a frequently asked questions book that's fairly thick, and you can call them and ask them questions once you've taken their course and passed it. So it's been a great resource for me. I really love those guys. Jim Blair and Mark Kiner teach the course. They're a couple of comedians, keep you interested in it when they're teaching it. So it's done me very well.
Wonderful. And as we are wrapping up our time together, I always like to ask what is the best approach? If we are going to help educate more women, what do you feel is the best approach to get that ball rolling? Julie, I'll have you start.
It's education, clearly. I mean, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And for the women that have come through my office that just had no clue, they really enjoy the educational process. They don't need to become subject matter experts like Ash and I, but they're open to learning because life has now forced them to get involved in it. So I would say, my answer to that is the more we can do to educate women about what their options are, the better off they'll be in the long run.
And I just did get a question from the audience, which I think is really important. So Ash, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
If you continue working after you start taking Social Security and make a higher year income, does it automatically increase your benefit? It's a great question.
Yeah. Your benefit's based on your highest 35 years of indexed earnings. Whether you're collecting a Social Security check or not, once those earnings are recorded, it could increase your benefit amount. I mean, if you've already maxed out, more years of earnings isn't going to help you. But if you haven't and you're still working, or just because you're collecting a Social Security check doesn't mean they stop counting your earnings history, right? They continue to calculate it.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering that. And I did interrupt you before you got to share your best.
What women should know, I just want to get clarified. You're talking about women who are financial advisors or women who are clients?
How do we approach them as advisors to start that conversation? How do we
approach a woman?
Yes.
Woman is that okay? I think this is a good news story. I've told my Gina years ago, if I had an appointment to talk about investments or insurance with somebody, there's a good chance they were going to reschedule or cancel. When I started Social Security appointments, they were in the parking lot 30 minutes early because they're coming to get money. This is a good day. You're going to blow them away. They have no conception of how much money they can get from Social Security and how valuable it is. It's a good feel. You can feel good talking about Social Security to your clients. It's a huge opportunity to make them feel better about their retirement because it's a good story, right? And so you're bringing a lot of knowledge to them. But I think you have to start from the beginning, like get their benefit. They may not even have a statement. They may not have even looked up their benefit amounts. Show them that there may be opportunities to secure additional benefits. They may come in as a divorced woman saying, this is all I have. This is what I'm living on. This is my Social Security check, not knowing they may be able to collect off a former spouse. These are all important conversations. So, I just tell them, look, it all starts with Social Security and other pensions. Whatever you have as a guaranteed income stream, figure that out, get that best strategy. And get them excited about this. This is a good story.
Awesome. I probably would be 30 minutes early in your parking lot, Julie or Ash, just to hear you speak. I always love speaking with you and learning from you because you bring such a wealth of knowledge in a way that I always feel more prepared. So thank you for sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, are there any last questions in the audience? I can tell you we've got some handouts that you will get after this session. We have an article written by Ash that is phenomenal. And we've got the Social Security for Women straight from the U.S. government. Julie and Ash, thank you. I always love the fact that you give us such great information. Thank you for giving us your time. And everyone on here, if you've got questions, reach out. If there's something more you'd like to learn, let us know because we're here to help you help your clients enter retirement happily and hopefully safely. So thank you for giving us your time and we appreciate you. Make it a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to A Woman's Clarity, brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Subscribe now and never miss an opportunity to learn how to become a more proactive, holistic advisor to the fast-growing female client base. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help support and enhance your business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.